Welcome to TAP, everyone. So happy you're with us today, and welcome to you, Colin.
Mm,
And I'm gonna say your full name now, Colin Karewa Forbes.
very good.
Yeah, and I know you from, well, you have several Substacks going on. I know you as a writer, and I received a newsletter from you. I don't know how it landed there, but of course now I subscribe, but I'm not sure I did at the time actually. But it landed in my inbox, and I just got really curious about who you are, so
Mm,
and what you stand for, and you have this saying, "Surf the spiral." Can
mm.
you let us know what is it all about? What is it that you do, and what is that spiral?
Yeah. What happened was I started my Substack journey. I'm going to skip back just a little bit. The whole reason you and I are talking is because until 1993, I was a fairly normal human. And then in 1993, I got faced with some really big personal challenges that forced me to come to grips with whether or not I wanted to stay alive. Basically, do I want to deal with this?
Mm.
And I was someone who, from both my father is a Maori, an indigenous native of New Zealand. He immigrated into the U.S. in 1958. My mother is a white American, a fifth generation Mormon. And from both sides, I had a very deep spiritual training when I was a young child and all throughout my adult years. So I was somebody who believed in a spiritual purpose for life, but this was the first time I was faced with something that made me say, yeah, maybe it's not worth it.
Mm.
And through a series of events, I went through a profound 3 week awakening experience in 1994 that has hounded me, like literally left me unable to leave it alone for the last 30 years. Through that process, it eventually came to the moment where I realized I think I'm ready to share some of the information I've garnered, because basically I just wanted to figure out what the hell happened to me, Mana. I
Yeah.
just wanted to understand what just came out of the blue, completely disrupted my life. I mean, within a year, I was out of organized religion. My family had estranged me, and I was okay with it. I quit my job, sold my house. All I wanted to do was meditate in a desert in southern Utah. That's all I did for. I meditated and I worked as a fireman for a Shoshone shaman at Sweat Lodge for an entire year. So I went from an Ernst and Young CPA trained assistant controller in a public company, and a year later I moved into the desert in southern Utah, and all I want to do is meditate and be one with everything.
That's a contrast, right? Whoa. Okay. So, and you say you wanted to figure out what happened, but in a way you must have known what happened because all you wanted to do was meditate. So in a way you knew something.
Oh, I knew something happened. I mean,
Yeah.
at the time, I didn't have the objectivity. I didn't have the capacity to objectively stand back and say, hmm, I wonder what happened. I'm going to analyze this. That didn't happen for a long time. I
Mhm.
was on a wave, and that's where the beginnings of the surf the spiral happened clear back then. I was grabbed by this wave, and I literally felt almost like I had to do what I did. I mean, my poor wife, we were married, we had 3 children. Um, Two of them were our two sons. The big crisis I had was I got told that both of our sons were cognitively disabled through a genetic defect. And I
Mm.
just couldn't imagine having to live a life dealing with that for the rest of my life. So here my poor wife is. I'm at one point a normal, upstanding citizen, and the next thing you know, I got hair halfway down my back, and all I want to do is meditate in the desert.
How did she react to it? How did she go along with it or?
Well, I'll put it to you this way: we're still married and we're still in love. So
Oh, that's sweet. Wonderful.
It
Okay,
is miracle,
so,
actually.
s quite the miracle. But so did you find out what happened to you?
Well, see, during that time, I thought, to your point, when by saying what you said, it really made me realize I did think I knew. I did think I knew what happened to me. What I felt happened to me was what I perceived as God at the time. Um, Tapped me on the in the third eye and woke me up in a way that I didn't know was possible. And all I wanted to do was go deeper into that. And so during the first 5 years after, I tell people that I went on a 5 year spiritual runner. You know, you hear about these people like, I'm just going to do it no matter what it takes. And I did that for about 5 years until I had uh, a moment where I was looking for a guru. I
Mm,
was looking for once that happened, I started reading everything I could. I read hundreds of books during those 5 years. I was always a reader and I was always a seeker, but now all of a sudden it moved from the religion I grew up in into the world of spirituality. And I explored everything I could. And I came across the concept of a guru. And I kept thinking, oh my God, if I could just find that guru. And eventually, 5 years later, I was working for people who had been initiated into a tradition from a Himalayan master who had come to the U.S. and established an ashram. And I was like, yes, I'm here. I've got this. And
wow.
after only about 6 months, I was like, oh my God, this is just like a church. This is just the same thing, at least for me. You know, everybody, I'm not condemning all of my siblings are still, I have 6 siblings. They're all still members of the religion we grew up in, very
Okay.
faithful. I,
Okay.
for the longest time, I judged that, condemned it, thought they were, wrong. I'm not saying that any of it's wrong. What I'm saying is for me, it no longer worked to listen to a human.
Yeah.
And so what happened was 5 years in, I thought spirit had led me to this place where I could be initiated. I'd been initiated into the Himalayan tradition. I was doing my japa, counting my beads. It was going great. And then this one day I was like, oh man, this guy's just a human just like me. This is why I don't want to listen to humans. And so I started the same process I went through in 1994 that led me into my awakening experience. I had learned that if I get really, really intensely focused on asking, I will eventually get an answer. Now,
Mhm.
it took 4 months the first time, and it took 4 months on this time. This was 1999. It took 4 months of just pleading, asking, fasting, praying, help me understand where's the guru that's going to get me there. And I'm on my meditation cushion, and spirit whispers, the guru you seek is within you. Well, that's not a new thought. I had read that before. I'd read that in about 5 or 6 different books. But here's the difference. When you read a sentence on a piece of paper, that's one thing. But when it gets spoken into every cell in your being,
Yeah.
that changes everything. And I had dragged my wife all over. We were now living in halfway across the United States, no family, alone. And I just was like, oh my God, I am so tired. This spiritual journey is so hard. I'm not going to do this anymore. And so in 1999, I left for work. I went right to a barbershop, had them cut my ponytail off, put it in a rubber band, and I drove home, handed it to my wife, and I said, I'm good. I'm ready to be normal again. We'll get a real job. We'll get us a house. We'll be normal humans. I'm done with the spiritual seeking. I'm just gonna. I'd never drank beer before. I was a Mormon. Mormons don't
Yeah.
drink beer. I
Sure.
drank my first beer when I was 38. I decided I'm gonna watch football, drink beer, and be a normal guy. And that's
How did that work out for you?
well, unfortunately, once you have that awakening moment, it does not leave you alone. He,
Mm.
I mean, I've learned now that if you have a brief one, you can ignore it. You can deaden it with beer or football or work or whatever. You can ignore it for a while. But if it was a strong enough one, you can't ignore it. And I couldn't ignore it. So that was 99. By 2003, I was working in Iraq and traveling all over the world. And by 2005, I was meditating again and starting the seeking process. So I only lasted about 5 or 6 years.
Oh my God, it's so hard to hold myself back, Colin, when you speak, because I resonate so much with your experiences there.
Mm.
Ah, so where should I start? Just the feeling of, okay, this is also a religion. That experience where I thought this was different. This is something else, and yet that I mean, you're talking about that it's because it's what a human. I don't want to do what a human tells me to do in that sense, but it's also structures. I think it's structures and it's hierarchy and it's power and um, it's forgetting about the point. And so I really recognize that a feeling again and again having like, oh, this is a bit like religion, maybe not completely, but and it could be a school, for example, as well, right? Because it's about controlling the mind somehow.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, that was something that was very new to me. It was very hard for me at first because I was a Mormon CPA. Now, if you don't know Mormons, that's one thing, but you know what a chartered accountant. Chartered accountants are all about boxes and it has to fit in this box and this box has to equal this box. I was so left brain ingrained. It's a miracle that it happened, and I ascribe what happened to my Indigenous heritage. So one of the things I did during those first 5 years is I went to New Zealand to meet my family because my dad was one of 14 children, and he's the only one that came to America. So in New Zealand and Australia, like I literally have more than 75 first cousins in New Zealand and Australia.
That's a lot. Okay.
And I didn't know any of them. I
Uh,
didn't know anything about my heritage. But all of a sudden I woke up and I started to read about Indigenous, the Native Americans, and I was like, holy cow, that's me. Because I grew up thinking white, except for the fact that we would sing some songs and my dad taught me a little bit about our culture, but it was never forefront of our mind.
how about that middle name of yours, Karewa?
Karewa. Karewa is the name of my Maori grandfather.
But you
And
didn't have that back then?
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm sorry. I did have it. I found out that my Maori grandfather had named each one of us American-born grandchildren. But no one ever told me. It wasn't until I got older and went through this that my mom said, I was telling her how much I wanted to reconnect with my Indigenous heritage. And my mom says, oh, well, we called him Nanny Pa. Nanny Pa gave you a Maori name. He gave you his name. I was like, what? What's his name? And she showed me from the paper he wrote, my name that he had written in his own hand, and each one of my brothers and sisters, he had given us a Maori name. And it turns out that that name was the name of his mother. Her name is Te Wairoto Pairoa Karewa. And her father's name was Tuauru Karewa. And he was a shaman. I didn't know this either. My great grandfather was the shaman of the tribe. They,
Wonderful. What a
they were called,
discovery.
yeah, they were called Tohunga. The Tohunga of the tribe was the spiritual keeper of the wisdom and simultaneously the genealogy of the people. The job of the Maori Tohunga was to memorize the genealogy back to the canoes that the Maoris landed in New Zealand on. And my grandfather had that memorized. He was trained by his grandfather he had the entire genealogy memorized all the way back to the Tainui canoe.
So that must really have changed your life.
It did. what it did, it
I'm
forced me
feeling
to
you,
recognize
Jimmy.
there is a whole different part of me that I had never acknowledged.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Coming back to who you really are.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but I was just resonating with that feeling. Okay, now again, I'm in a religious structure,
Oh
and
man.
that's that's where we came from. And what else? Maybe I can't remember that far back now, but I just resonate with. I think because we share some Sagittarius there in our chat, right? So this is the Sagittarius universal story. It
Yeah. The wanderer, the one that's going to go out and explore and
yeah,
find, learn.
seeker, like you said, the seeker, right? Really
Yeah.
seeking. And I also recognize having left religion and then I didn't want to have anything to do with it, and then coming back. Um,
Yes.
because it's just not going to leave you alone. And so that searching is in some people's ears, it's like, oh, but that's because you need something. It's a lack. And some of what you said sounded like that because you said it was really tough. But I also found that there's this discovery. It's just like it's a journey and it's wonderful. And it's if I get depressed, this is what gets me up. It's my
I
it's my
agree.
Sagittarius energy. It's like I need to find something that makes sense, so I have meaning in my life, so I have purpose, so there's more, so I can explore the mysteries. So
So now I want to start asking you questions about how you got here. We'll do that next time.
another
I'll
time, yes.
be the one to host and ask you the questions so I
Yes.
can hear your story.
I just wanted to resonate with what you're saying.
Yeah.
It really, yeah. Okay, but so do you have anything more you want to say about your story? Because I also,
Well, so what it got down to, once I finally got back into it
yeah,
and started searching again, that's when I realized, oh, there's actually there's got to be more to it than just having these big breakthroughs, because I had some big breakthroughs, but frankly at times I was still a jerk, you know. It wasn't manifesting in consistent and persistent higher levels of awareness and emotional intelligence.
okay,
And in my opinion, that's the promise of spirituality, really. It's the capacity to show up consistently. Well, I use the phrase coherent now, coherently. Coherence to me is a persistent flow state.
mm,
If I can't maintain a persistent flow type state, then I'm just a regular human, speaking words. And the way that I was told in my meditation, the intuition I received was, until you can completely harmonize with your wife, you got no business talking to anybody about anything spiritual. And that was a real humbling moment for me, because I had come from this really patriarchal, hierarchical, structured, or rigid religion that was all about the males have the priesthood and the women don't, and all this stuff. And so to come to grips with the fact that there's an internal harmonization that has to happen within myself before I'm going to effectively communicate my message, that was hard. That was that was 2009. My wife and I had been through some really big learnings, and through that we made a commitment to each other to live in full disclosure living. The single most terrifying thing that we've ever done together as a human is to commit to be radically honest with each other about everything.
a full disclosure,
Full
just
disclosure.
meaning you have to say everything.
The agreement is this: if I don't understand or I want to know something about what you're thinking, if I ask you, you have to tell me the truth.
Yeah,
But if you hear something that you don't like, you got to be okay with it. So if you want the truth, ask it, you'll get it. But if you get it and don't like the truth, that's your problem.
right. Yeah, good, good. No, it sounds really necessary
Oh,
to go deep together. You know. Yeah.
I got to tell you, it was so weird, Mana. The first year, both of us were like, I tell white lies all the time.
Oh, okay.
I tell white lies, not just to her. Like
Mm,
I exaggerate. I'll be telling a story and I'll just throw a little exaggeration. Well, by becoming very aware of being honest with each other, all of a sudden I became aware how dishonest I was in so many ways, in just little subconscious ways, you know? And after the first year, we're like, oh my God, I do this all the time. But over the years, it's slowly, you know, we kind of help each other. But I got to tell you, some of the big ones, some of the big, you know, telling of truth to each other is hard. That's
yeah.
really
It
hard.
it's another aspect of Sagittarius, the truth and telling and even exaggerating because
Yes.
because there's the storyteller in us. So okay, I can actually imagine that because it sounds really simple when you say it, just be honest with each other, full disclosure. But when you say it like that, oh yeah, I can imagine that's a process to realize. Oh yeah,
Well, it's funny
I'm
because
lying
I
all
had
the time.
it's funny because I had a couple of friends who I went and I was telling, oh yeah, we've agreed to live in full disclosure. And once I tell them about it, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that, man.
Do
That
that.
sounds really dangerous.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff. And so I bet your story is longer, but I want to get to just
Oh yeah,
understand
okay,
this
so the spiral. So here's what happened.
spiral. Yeah.
I get told, um, I'm telling the universe after Gilly and I are full disclosure, which I believe that is a key level that you have to reach to start to commit to truth. I realize now that moment was a big shift for me to commit to be truthful, because it was right after that that spirit told me to meditate on the chakras. And I'd never spent a lot of time. I knew about them, I'd read about them, and I didn't even know how to do it, but I just started contemplating the chakras. This was 2009. For 5 years I did that, and little by little the awareness started to come, and that was how I started to learn to speak symbol. Speaking symbol is, in my opinion, one of the most important skills that a spiritual seeker needs to gain. The capacity to contemplate a symbol and have it reveal its wisdom to you directly, not having to read it through a book, not that. That has been the single most important jump in my own personal evolution that I've taken. And so I won't get into the process of learning to speak symbol, but the way it happened is one day I was looking at the image of the golden ratio. Now, you know the golden ratio with the swirls and the little cubes that's in it. Are you familiar with phi, the formula,
Yes.
mathematics?
Yes.
Well, the image that it draws is a series of cubes through which uh, flows a single spiral. Okay. And I was contemplating that image, seeking wisdom from it. And at some point, I'll share this with you. I actually had a graphic artist create this for me. All of a sudden, in front of my eyes, the image went from 2D and it turned flat and then opened into 3 dimensions. And what it looked like was the little teeny square formed a cube. It wasn't just a square, it was a cube. And then there was a bigger cube and a bigger cube, and it was in a spiral form. And then that singular spiral swirled up in the middle of those cubes, and it just spun like this. And in that moment was the birth of surfing the spiral, because what I recognized, and this is the symbolic meaning to me, is that those cubes are the level of awareness or perspective that we have. And so, for example, there's consciousness in an atom. An atom has little teeny awareness, and it spins around in there and does its thing perfectly. And with each level of awareness we gain, whether through mineral, plant, animal, human, and beyond, our cubes get bigger. We get access to greater awareness. And that spiral is the individuation. It's my individuation spiraling up into these greater levels of awareness. that's the beginning of Surf the Spiral.
Wonderful. So more capacity and more outlook. I mean,
More life is how I term it.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
More, yeah.
Because if you think about the universe is in an expansion. It's in a constant expansion,
Yeah.
right? And that's key for us as individuals, because if we don't remember that, the pressure of persistent expansion gets turned into feelings of stress.
Mm.
We live in a material world that is in constant expansion. It's in constant movement. It's in constant growth. And we live egoically like we're in a static form, and that's not the case.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, so and you're saying then that can turn into stress. So what are we to do? Come into the flow state?
The key for me was the shift from what I call the IEO operating system, which is the individual egoic outcome-based operating system. Most of us live like that. We think in beginnings and endings. If I have this outcome, I'm a failure. If I don't get this outcome, I'm going to be stressed while I'm moving towards the outcome. And then I get the outcome and I either win or lose. But the day after I won or lost, I'm looking for another outcome.
Mm.
This ceaseless one after. The first time I ever really felt this deeply was, I can remember watching Michael Jordan. For the basketball fans out there, I'm a big fan, sports fan. I remember watching Michael Jordan win his first championship, and he was like hugging the trophy and kissing it. And I thought, that's weird, man. And then he did it a little bit the next time, and then the third time. And then after he won it the third time, he quit basketball and went to try to play baseball. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And then he came back and he won 3 more, and then still was unsatisfied. And I've watched these teams win these great global championships, but the next year they just have to go do it again. And I'm like, I want something more permanent than that. I want something that'll give me that winning satisfaction. And that led me to develop what I call the UOP-OS, which is the Universal Oneness Process operating system. And that's the operating system that says, oh, I'm an infinite consciousness, individuated. My individuation is a natural part of this, in infinite oneness process. UOP, Universal Oneness Process.
Mm.
So I am in a process. I'm not in an outcome. I'm in a process. And as soon as I started shifting from worrying about the outcomes and moving into surfing that spiral, just waking up every day and like, I'm surfing the spiral, man. Oh, I wiped out today. I'm going to get back on my board, surf the spiral again. Oh, I hit a freaking awesome wave today, but there's another wave tomorrow. So I got to stay on this board and keep on surfing. And that's the genesis of Surf the Spiral, is the realization that I'm on an infinite spiral and there is no outcome. Abraham Hicks, I don't know if you've heard of Abraham Hicks. One of her great teachings that I've always hung on to is, she says, you can't get it wrong because you can never get it done. That was the moment. It's like, I'm surfing an infinite spiral. So then what's the goal? What's the goal of a spiral surfer? Just increase your awareness 1% a day. If I can expand my awareness just a little bit every day, the mathematics are exponential, Mana. If you increase anything 1% a day, within 1 year, you increase 37 times. It's a 3,700% increase, just 1% a day. But listen to this, over a decade, over 70 million times greater. So even if you commit to 1% a day greater awareness, and you only get half? Well, then maybe you only increased your awareness by 18 times in a year and only 30 million times in 10 years.
Well, 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 life is not, you don't have to count. I mean, okay, so I'm struck by a few things. First of all, I think you did a great job of telling the story or the background story of cervical
Thank you.
spiral in short. So I appreciate that. And and then I'm also thinking how 12 houses this is. So you are Sagittarius in the 12th house, right? And I'm a Pisces, so but so but so it's I just okay, I'm trying to formulate a question that is honestly from my heart, and it often comes up when we're talking about these grand things and about what life is and what it's not. What about astrology? What about astrology? Because these are some archetypes, some energies that are flowing against through us, and and then everything that we say and become is that. And so, is there anything greater than the astrology? Do you know what I'm saying? Because what you're talking about
I
is
absolutely don't.
growth. You're talking about the Sagittarian growth here, right? And it excites you. And then you
Yeah.
also talk about the flow. And I'm just seeing all of these archetypes. And I often get this question. And here I'm sending it to you. Please answer.
Well, okay, so this is perfect. And it leans into something I tried to share with you, in which I will work with you and we will sort it out. So I start being able to speak symbol. The chakras started to reveal themselves, but the first symbol that really like opened up to me was the yin yang symbol. That symbol, when that thing opened up, I was like, oh my God, these are like ancient hard drives. These symbols are packed with deep wisdom, but to get into their wisdom, you have to contemplate them consistently over time before they will reveal their wisdom to you. Okay. So I'm in this place, and my wife, so she's agreed to let me tell parts of her story. She's very private and not one to go out and talk about stuff like this. In fact, it's like acid on her skin when 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 I told her that what I was doing. She says, Colin, you might as well run naked down the street as far as I'm concerned. This kind of vulnerability is not my thing. But she's agreed to let me tell her part of my story, and that is this. When we were first married, and she was born and raised as a Mormon, but never ever was a believer.
Okay.
I was a true believer. I drank the Kool-Aid. I did a Mormon mission in Buenos Aires, Argentina, learned to speak the language, tried to preach and save the world. She kept to herself that she always had her own private spirituality and thought of religion as a social club. And of course, we weren't talking openly when we first met, so I thought she was a true believer. Well, early on, when I began to try and be patriarchal and tell her what God wanted her to do through me, she very clearly said, basically, yeah, you never talk to me like that again and we'll be fine. and so we've been in love our whole lives, and we've been together 41 years. But within our first year, she made it very clear, you do you spiritually and I'll do me and we'll be okay. I didn't I pushed it on occasion, but eventually, because we were in love and have kept that love alive, I was just okay with it. So now I'm speaking symbol, at least basically. And all of a sudden in 2014, my wife, who had never wanted to read any of the books, never wanted to meditate, never wanted to do any of the things I wanted to do, this one day says, I think I want to read a book about the moon. And I'm not kidding you, Mana. I was like, oh my God, what's happening here? Wow. Okay. Now, up until that time, I did not delve into astrology or tarot, because the people I had met on my journey who were in that world, it almost seemed like it took over their lives. Like, I've got to look at my chart because of this, or I've got to, lay some cards to know what's happening. And that felt a lot like religion to me, like what you were saying earlier, you know? And it just put me off. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Well, all of a sudden she reads this book on the moon, and a week later she comes and she says, in this book, it talks about tarot cards. Have you got tarot cards? And I said, well, I've had a tarot reading or two. I know a little bit, but she says, I think I'd like a deck of tarot cards. I'm like, okay, cool. We went right up Amazon, ordered deck of tarot cards. And a week later, I'm not kidding, she walks in, never meditated, never read any of the books, nothing. She walks up, she goes, I don't know why, but I know how to use these cards. I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? She says, yeah, I know how to use them. I know if you put them in certain ways, they can show you what things mean. And I'm like, how do you even freaking know this? Right. And so I'm just okay. And she starts showing me, and she starts doing a weekly spread for our family. And it's like, she's like right on. And we're talking and I'm learning. And all of a sudden I find out, no lie, we had been married 30 years at the time. I find out that I'm married to one of the most powerful psychics I've ever met.
What?
Yeah.
Amazing. So she's just so intuitive and knew what to do from
Well, the thing
the
is all of a sudden, all these things start clicking into place
yeah.
throughout our lives, Mona. Like if I was looking for something, I'd say, honey, where's this? And she'd say, oh, it's over here. And I just thought she was keeping track of the whole house. All she would do was close her eyes, and the image of where it was at would appear in her mind, and she would tell me.
Amazing.
But she never told me any of that. She sees auras. She's always seen auras. She can see colors. She's always more than once she's said to me, don't do business with that person. And then of course I just did it anyway, and it went badly, but she could see their aura.
That's good for the test. Now you know. That's amazing. And
Anyway, so the whole reason I'm telling you this is she got going in it, and she said, look, the books say that if I'm going to learn tarot, I have to know astrology. And she says, I'm never going to study astrology. She says, I want you to study astrology. I'm like, okay, anything
excellent.
I do to, I was so excited that I'm married to this tarot reading witch, you know? So I start studying astrology, and I literally bought Astrology for Dummies, and I'm reading, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a lifetime of work. This is so much.
Yeah.
So I get to the point where she starts asking me questions, and I realize if I don't understand tarot, then when she asks me questions about tarot related to astrology, I'm not going to be able to know anything. So I bought myself a Rider Smith tarot deck, and I started playing around with it. And that's the beginnings of the construct. That thing I sent you, that script. What happened was this one day I grabbed it, and I split it up into the major arcana and the minor arcana. And I liked the major arcana because you had a name and a number. And I'm a very, very hyper rational human on one side, deeply emotional on the other. But the hyper rational is the learner. And I like the name, and I like the number on the major arcana. And I started playing around with it. There were some things, I'll tell you more about it later, but all of a sudden I had this tarot spread that like was symmetrical geometrically. It was very pleasing to my eyes, and this sensation came over me, the resonance that said, you need to pay attention to this. And that is the beginnings of what became what I call the construct in a day-to-day. But in actuality, I was told this is the image of I am. This is an image of what we really are. And over 10 years, I began to contemplate this structure, and it led to really, really deep realizations of integration, polarities. It's a really amazing thing. And I knew I had something. I knew I had something really important, because for the first time, and you mentioned it earlier, that the challenge is with tarot, with astrology, with these kinds of things, every person has their own take. Every person interprets the Fool card to be one thing or another. And there are some quote unquote wise teachers who have put out books to say this means this and that means that. But what the construct does is it takes personality out of it. Numerology, astrology, tarot, quantum physics, human physiology, all of it overlays and is integrated so that you don't really get to question it or wonder about it. It can reveal answers to you. So in response to your question about where does astrology fit for me, astrology for me is the science of personality from the moment of your birth. You can literally look at a natal birth chart. I can look at a natal birth chart now, and I know things about that human that I have no business knowing.
Yeah.
It's a very personal thing now. Like if somebody asks me for my birth data, it's like revealing my social security number to them, you know?
Yeah, the souls. Yeah, we did
Yeah.
that. That was
Yeah.
very, yeah, okay. But okay, so my question was, and I I do that. It can be hard to formulate things for me when it's so grand. But I think you actually answered, even though maybe I wasn't clear on the question. But the question was because when I listened to what you were saying, I felt, but this is so Sagittarius in the 12th house, and this is how I often feel. I often feel like that, and then I feel, are we just boxed in? So that's really my question is, are we just boxed in, these energies flowing through us, and we can't really, we can't go beyond that, in a sense. Every advice that I give, every recognition, every acknowledgement, every piece of wisdom that I can already see that it goes straight back to it points me back to my chart, like you say, because this is what we're given and these are our potentials. So it's like I can never, yeah, transmute.
Well, I believe you can.
Okay.
So the way I look at my chart now is if we get back to the idea that I'm in an infinite process, that my chart tells me, Colin, when you were born, the combination of your parental and cultural programming, along with your own nature as an infinite being, the level of attainment you have gained cumulatively over time, you can look at your chart for that. So I can look in my chart and I can see influences of my mother, influences of my father, influences of my culture, but more than anything, I can see this is how I perceive the world. It's the filter through which I perceive the world.
Yeah.
Now, that thing that I was talking about, expanding awareness, when you expand your awareness, you can transcend that snapshot of how you perceive the world. You can start to, oh, I can see. So, for example, my Mars is retrograde and out of bounds in Cancer in the 7th house. Now, to a non-astrologist, that's like, okay, whatever. To a human who understands astrology, it's a miracle that I have any willpower at all. Any personal intensive willpower could, because to have Mars out of bounds, which already makes you a little crazy, retrograde, you're going backwards. You're in a water sign where fire planets are not happy there. And I'm in the 7th house, which is the house of union and partnership. Basically, the way I interpret it now is I am so willful that if I didn't put my Mars in chains, I was just going to be a jerk my whole life, man. Because even with that Mars placement, I can still be really a jerk.
Yeah, so I don't know about that, Colin, because like you said, there are many ways of interpreting that. Of course, one way could be, okay, you're fighting with your partner, which you're obviously not, but it could also be that you're
Well,
fighting for your partner and that you are attracting a partner who is quite Cancerian.
I was actually commentating on the fact that the Martian Aryan energy of me,
Yeah,
that first house power of this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. all of that energy got placed in a way that was perfect for me to assume the role of a longtime companion, because Sagittarians aren't known for that.
Sure, right. Yeah.
Sagittarians are not known for being longtime good companions. It put me in a place where I was more aware of where I used my will. So as a child, I was not a willful, like rebellious. I didn't go around trying to punch people. In fact, some of my friends would potentially tell you that I was a little bit of a wuss. I would cry a lot. I was very emotional. It was really hard for me to express my individuation forcefully, you know. And over the years, I recognize now I'm grateful for it, because it made me more empathetic, I think, more capable of feeling. I feel deeply. Mars in Cancer retrograde, you're going to feel shit.
Yeah, yeah, gonna feel it and you're gonna remember it and wow, yeah. I'm not sure about that. I don't think we can get out of it, all of the astrological archetypes. You have to convince me. On later occasions, we have about 5 or so minutes
Okay.
left. So it's just, but it's okay, right? Just open questions, and these are
You
really,
want to explore real quick the upcoming the big changes that are coming, or the
I
big
would love to. I would love to hear about that.
Okay, so Andre Barbeau, a French astrologer, using astrology, predicted the 2020 pandemic. He put it in writing decades ago. Said that in that Jupiter, it was I can't remember which Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto conjunction of 2020, whichever one, December 21st, 2020, that it was going to cause a big pandemic. And sure enough, it did. Oh, no, sorry. I take it back. It was pointing to, it didn't cause anything. It was pointing to, like a signpost, the pandemic. Well, he also pointed to what a few people have called a basket formation that was coming in 2026. And he didn't ever use the term basket, but it's a formation where Pluto's going to be at 4 degrees Aquarius, Neptune will be at 4 degrees Aries, Uranus will be at 4 degrees Gemini, and Jupiter will be at 4 degrees Leo. I'm pretty sure it's Leo. But anyway,
Yeah, and just what's his, is it someone who's still alive?
no, Andre Barbeau is no longer alive. He wrote,
Okay.
okay. Well, he pointed to that. That's and he predicted, just like he predicted the uh, pandemic, he predicted it would be the beginning of the new world for humans, that suddenly we would all start to shift into deeper awareness spiritually. Well, then all of a sudden, I've known about this for years, but then Alice A. Bailey, who was a student of Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky, she and her channeling from Dwaj Kul predicted that 2025 was going to be the beginning of the new earth. And then Ra Uru Hu, the founder of the human design astrology, he predicted 2027 was going to be the time when the world completely shifts. And then, so if you do this, go to your ChatGPT, put it in a research mode, and ask it for all the signs pointing to the time period between 2025, 2027. There's a lot there. Even the futurists, Ray Kurzweil, the guy who's talking about the singularity coming forward, it's all going to happen between 2025 and he was saying 2029, but now he's pulling it back a little tighter and saying it's not going to have to take that long. So the science mind, the church mind, the indigenous, the unchurched minds, the three minds that I feel we deal with, they're all pointing to this 3-year period as a big, big, big shift. And we're right in the middle of it right now.
Oh,
In
yeah.
my opinion, it's really going to kick off in the new moon next week. The new moon in Virgo next week. Pluto's at 2 degrees. Neptune and Saturn are both at 1 degrees Aries. Uranus is at 1 degrees Gemini. And Mars, the new moon. The new moon's at 0 degrees Virgo. We have 6 planets that are going to all be at 2 to 0 degrees. And in my opinion, it's a big deal.
I believe it is. I believe it is. And The eclipses. I'm big
Well,
on.
so there's going to be 2 new moons in Virgo. This is not common. It happens every year that in one sign you get 2 new moons. It just so happens we get 2 new moons in Virgo, and the second one's an eclipse. And eclipse energy is really potent.
Yeah. And then you're talking about the great alignment, you call it that, and that's next summer.
July of 2026
Yeah.
is when it all comes in. But there's a great alignment happening right now. I mean, it's happening right now. 1 to 2 degrees is with the new moon on the 23rd. It's a big one.
It has begun.
It has begun.
It has begun, and for a couple of years here. I mean, but that's why I think it's so important to speak to each other. And I hope that we can have many more conversations, Colin.
Oh, I hope so too.
Conversations with Colin, isn't that a good name?
Yeah,
Conversations with Colin.
that'll make people want to listen.
Yeah.
not,
Because
not my family.
probably not. But there's so much to talk about, right?
Oh,
And I so appreciate your background and your wisdom.
hmm.
And yeah, absolutely gonna leave a link to your Substacks. I guess there are 3 links then.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, is there anything you want to say? I don't want to rush off here. Just is there anything you want to say?
Oh, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. Seriously, Mana, it's such an interesting thing to be on a journey, and this. Spiritual seeking is a lonely journey.
Yeah.
The true seeker, in my opinion, if you stop for a moment and try to go with a group, you lose your way. And so it's fun to find a human who, like you, is on her journey and, to your point, said, hey, I'm walking this road, maybe we could talk for a while. And I think that's awesome. And it's not a place where you're trying to convince me or I'm trying to convince you, or we're trying to say my path is better than your path or whatever. We're both saying, hey, I'm walking a path, and maybe what you have to share with me will help me on my path, and what I have to share with you will help you on yours.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah, and a good point from everything we started and your story, and now you're saying it's actually a lonely or a lonesome, alone path. Yeah, I find that as well. And then,
Well, it's true.
yeah,
I point to, for the longest time, I hated anything to do with Christianity. I was born and raised in it. I read scripture. And so anything to do with Christian scripture or whatever. But once I got past it and started to see the inner meaning, the symbolic meanings of statements.
yeah.
And here's one of my favorite: 2 shall be in a field and 1 will be taken. And what does that tell me? It tells me this isn't a group exercise, man. It's you. You are the guru you're looking for.
2 in the field and 1 should be taken. This is like the Judgment Day or something you're talking about. Wow. Okay.
2 will be in the field and 1 will be taken. 2 will be doing something and 1 will, I come like a thief in the night. This isn't a group participation exercise. This is you. You are literally climbing free solo. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. We'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, let's do that. Oh, that's really good. I want to say, I just came to that point where I can look at Christianity in a more mystic way.
And that's good, because otherwise it's so hard to talk about it in front of people who are like, I still hate organized religion.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a side that can come up like that, but I have come to that same conclusion that there's some wisdom there. And then it's interesting because you can pull it up from your childhood memories about
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
there in the background. Okay, Colin Karewa Forbes, did I say it correctly? Karewa.
So I'll just, it's like me trying to say your name.
Yeah.
I've decided to pronounce it mana, like the Maori word mana, because I love that energy.
Yes.
But Karewa.
Karewa. Colin Karewa Forbes.
Yeah, it's very aggressive. The Maori language is very aggressive.
Karewa.
Yeah, very good.
Karewa Forbes. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for serving the spiral a little bit here with me, and talk to you later.
Okay, thank you.